Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So patch 6.11 has been out for a few days now, and I feel like the biggest question is, what are the major changes that happened this patch in terms of which champions are now OP? Or in other words, especially when I'm playing ranked, which of the champions should I be most worried about? Which one should I be picking or banning? But right before we get into that, guys, I want to give a quick mention about Discord. Now, yes, this is a sponsored promotion, but this one I 100% approve of. I personally use Discord every single day with my friends, and the reason is just because it works and it's a very simple program. It's super easy to share images, check them out, join other servers that your other friends have created, make your own server, make the channels within it, give your friends mod permission, and just a whole bunch of things like that. So we'll have a link down below. I highly recommend at least checking it out because I genuinely use this every single day. So throughout this video, I will be giving you guys my 7 must pick or ban champions for patch 6.11 and also be throwing in 2 honorable mentions at the end of the video. So if you end up enjoying this video, finding it helpful or whatever, then definitely hit that like button to let me know. But let us not waste any more time and go right into the first champion. And starting things off for us is going to be Fizz. So now, as I'm sure most of you already know, on this series, the first champion that I mention is always the most OP champion, or what I think to be is the #1 priority of a must pick or ban. And clearly that champion for this video is going to be Fizz. Now, the reason Fizz is just so insanely strong right now is because he once again can be played in multiple roles with multiple different builds successfully. He's an exceptionally strong flex pick, so do you pick Fizz to go mid lane and go pure AP? You can definitely do that and it'll work. Do you want to go Fizz top lane and go a Bruiser Triforce Fizz? That'll be fine. Do you want to go top Fizz and play Iceborne Gauntlet into pure tank? That's okay as well. All of these different builds that bring different things that the enemy team won't know what you're doing until you're already doing it is just really strong right now. But on top of all of that, I mean, Fizz is just a champion that tilts a lot of players just because of his playstyle, because, you know, he has a lot of mobility. His ultimate is pretty much death, and you can dodge almost anything with your E ability. All in all, Fizz is just Fizz, except even better. I mean, Triforce is strong on him, Iceborne Gauntlet is great, going pure AP mid lane is just as good as anything else as well. A lot of options with this champion, very hard for the enemy team to know which one you're doing and play around it. And it just feels like he's becoming Echo's successor, you know, becoming a tank Fizz or AP Fizz or whatever. So without question, Fizz is the #1 champion that I recommend you must pick or ban whenever you're playing ranked or normal draft. But here are my recommended runes, items, and masteries when playing top lane Triforce Fizz. Now, there's 3 different types of Fizz builds. I decided to talk about this one because I'll be talking about another one in a video in just a couple of days. Plus, this is the newer build that's a bit more interesting, which if you want to try out, well, here's kind of what you want to do. But speaking of an annoying champion that can be played successfully either mid lane or top lane, let's talk about Vladimir. It seriously feels like this guy is finally rising up to his previous dominance. I mean, after the rework, at first, I personally thought he was really strong. He came out to the live servers, felt a little bit underwhelming, but now people are better understanding him, how he works, which items to get, and I have to say, Vladimir is very, very annoying. I don't know how many of you guys watched my recent Journey to Masters episode, but in that game, I played Fizz against the Vladimir mid lane. Couldn't do anything to him. He was so tanky, yet he was doing just as much damage as I was. I mean, he got buffed a few patches ago as well, where his ultimate now gives him an insane amount of HP based on how many people you hit. His laning phase, I also feel like is just simply not as bad as it should be, and if this clip right here where this Vlad outplays them and doesn't end up dying doesn't convince you that Vladimir is a strong champion right now, then I simply do not know what will. His 3rd Q heals for a lot. It does an insane amount of damage, as you're going to be seeing in this example right here. His W is still as good as ever, being able to avoid plenty of damage while also healing him up and slowing targets. And his E ability, the newest one in his kit, it can feel a little bit awkward at first, but once you get the hang of it, not only does it have good pushing potential, but in a team fight, if you get a fantastic E off, then this ability alone, because it also provides the slow, can be the difference between winning and losing a fight based off of just that one ability. But now we're gonna watch this clip right here as the Vladimir kills the Swain. Check this out. I mean, this part I legitimately thought he had to die, but luckily for him, that 3rd Q, the heal is just absolutely insane. The damage was crazy as well. He doesn't die, and Vladimir is just being Vladimir. But either way, guys, here are the recommended items, runes, masteries, and overall build when playing Vladimir. I mean, you want the Storm Raider Surge. It helps you a lot with just how his kit works, and you want to get some tanky AP items, with Spirit Visage being an absolute core. But let's keep up the pace and talk about another champion just like Vladimir or Fizz, can be played mid lane, top lane, acts pretty much the same way, is very tanky, is annoying to deal with, Swain. It feels like we're talking almost about the same champion every single time. I mean, Swain, what does he do? Just like Vladimir, he uses an ability, he gets a lot of life back. You can't really kill him because he's just way too tanky and he's getting too much life back while also slowing people down with his Q, rooting them with his W, or just doing overall a lot of damage with all of his abilities combined. I'm sure you're starting to see a little bit of a trend here. A lot of these champions are playing very similarly. But ever since the changes happened to Swain's ultimate, where it now has a base healing with an AP ratio rather than just percent damage done, this guy has went from being probably one of the worst champions in League of Legends to being probably one of the best at the very moment. If you've ever faced a Swain recently, especially in a ranked game that built with proper items and played it at least more or less correct, then I'm sure you already have a pretty decent idea as to how ridiculously annoying this champion can be. It almost feels like Swain is becoming Tank Echo version 2.0, but just like the other champions, here are my recommended runes, items, masteries, and overall build when playing Swain, if you somehow manage to get him this patch without him being banned, which he honestly should be. But let's finally take a little bit of a break and slow it down from those annoying, unkillable tanky AP champions and talk about Kindred. Now I know Kindred isn't much better when talking about very strong champions that are very difficult to kill, because this champion obviously has that ultimate while having still a lot of damage. So patch 6.11, there were a lot of big nerfs happening to Kindred to the point where I personally thought, you know what, maybe this will finally slow this champion down. And even though Kindred has been slowed down, it's really not by a whole lot. Pretty much what happened is Kindred went from being, in my opinion, probably the #1 pick or ban champion to maybe number 4 or 5. Because yeah, sure, the Q damage went down. I mean, you have to get a lot of stacks to get the Q damage back up to where it was. Yeah, I mean, okay, fine. But that's not where the main damage of Kindred comes from. The main damage are the auto attacks, all of the on-hit effects that you get. And until something happens to the point where Kindred cannot just simply auto attack you to death very easily, very late into the game, then Kindred is just simply going to consistently be a top tier jungle champion. But here are my recommended runes, items, and masteries for playing Kindred. Not a whole lot has changed. For the most part, it's pretty much the same thing. But for real now, let's finally switch the pace up and go all the way down to the bot lane. Now, whenever I make these lists, I always like to include at least one support champion because the support role is heavily underrated, and I feel like there are a lot of support champions that can do a lot of things. But just because there's so many other champions that I feel like are just flat out absolutely ridiculous right now, I only have room for one support. And rather than constantly talking about the same ones like Taric or Soraka, I decided to switch it up and mention Blitzcrank. The reason is quite simple. I'm not only seeing a lot of Blitzcrank recently because he's a pretty good champion, but I mean, this guy can easily win a game for his team by getting that one vital pull later on into the game and just make things so much easier. On top of this, his laning phase really isn't all that bad. He provides a decent amount of CC. He tilts pretty much almost every single person that you're going to be laning against because no one likes getting pulled and dying. And compared to many supports, I feel like he has one of the best roaming potentials, maybe going to mid lane or somewhere in the jungle and making a play with someone else. Again, his W helps out a bit, but overall the grab range he has makes things so much easier. All in all, a very good support champion. Obviously, landing that one pull will win you the game, and I'm seeing him much more frequently in my games recently, on top of also seeing him banned here and there. So without question, if you're just someone prone to getting hit by Blitzcrank hooks, you might want to ban him this patch. You're going to be seeing him a lot more often. But if you decide to join the dark side by playing the Crank himself and tilt someone else, then here are my recommended items, runes, and overall build for playing the Blitzcrank. But let us move all the way over to top lane and talk about Irelia. Now, I'm sure most of you know about the new Triforce, the changes that happened to it, and Irelia has to be probably the one champion that everyone always thinks of whenever they hear the word Triforce or Trinity Force. And the reason for that is simple. I mean, she's always been using this item very effectively in her kit, and a lot of Irelia builds revolve around her just getting this item as being the only offensive item she gets, and then going pure tank while still dealing a very respectable amount of damage. But everything just became better for her because, again, the loss in critical strike chance on the Triforce that she doesn't really need got compensated with extra attack speed, which she does need, and even more CDR, which is a fantastic bonus. All in all, Irelia is just going to be a more popular champion right now, and she's not really overpowered or anything, but at the same time, she just feels a little too risky to let through and maybe get fed on the enemy team, because if she does get fed with the new Triforce, she'll be very difficult to stop. To me right now, Irelia is like Zed in the previous patch, not necessarily OP, but you know, strong enough to the point where it's just way way too risky to let them through. But if she does manage to somehow get through the bans and you end up picking her up, then here are my recommended runes and items when playing this champion. You obviously want Fervor of Battle because you have that immense attack speed now, you'll proc it a lot more often, and in your stun duration, you'll probably annihilate your opponent. And the final champion that I'll be talking about that I recommend you must pick or ban for patch 6.11 just before we go into the honorable mentions is Illaoi. Here's a champion that I'm sure no one has seen for a very long time, but I have to say the buffs received this patch are very good. Now when I read them at first, I mean I knew they were pretty good, but I wasn't honestly 100% sure how good because I couldn't really test it yet. But after playing against it, I have to say I was really shocked at just how much more damage she can now dish out. If you ever get hit by her E ability, you're gonna be taking so much damage, like to the point where I was absolutely shocked at how much damage I was taking. It was so disgusting. I just can't get over how disgusting it was. It was just insane. So this is the champion I'm slowly becoming scared of. I mean, I usually wasn't all that scared of her because I knew her teamfight just wasn't really all that good. And even though her teamfight presence hasn't really changed that much, landing her E ability while you're dancing, you know, waiting for someone to make the first move or the first mistake just feels so much more rewarding. Her harass in the laning phase and just throughout the game is overall better in my opinion with how her new Q works and how you're gonna build her. And all in all, this is definitely an up and coming champion that I recommend you watch out for. But in case you want to get ahead of the meta and try her out already, then here are my recommended items, runes, masteries, and all that good stuff when playing Illaoi. Now before we end off this video, I have two very quick honorable mentions, and the first one being Ashe. I truly believe that Ashe is a sleeper OP. I don't really see her that often, but when I do see her, she is ridiculously strong. She scales really well. Her ultimate has among the best engages in League of Legends, especially for an AD carry. And at first I was a little hesitant on whether or not to include her in my honorable mentions list, but then I saw a quote by Wild Turtle stating that next to Lucian, she's probably the best AD carry champion right now. It convinced me to do it. So either you want to start banning her out, watch out for her, or start playing her before everyone else does. And the second honorable mention is Cassiopeia. Now she also got a couple of buffs here and there, and for the most part I feel like she's becoming more and more popular because she really truly is very strong. And League of Legends now feels even more like an objective game with the new Rift Herald being absolutely ridiculously strong, obviously Baron being Baron, and all of the dragons being quite important. And as I'm sure most of you know, Cassiopeia when it comes to Baron or Dragon is one of the best champions to do them as fast as possible. So that plus her scaling potential and even her laning phase really being not all that bad makes Cassiopeia a very strong champion, one that's extremely underrated. But either way guys, that is about it for this video. There you have it, my 7 pick or ban champions for patch 6.11 plus my 2 honorable mentions. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that like button. Make sure to share this with your friends and check out my other videos as well. And I really hope to see each and every one of you back here for tomorrow's video. Peace.